So I said, it's funny how takes will just, whether they look good, they age well, they age poorly, they always come back at some point or another. I've had takes the past like, wish I hadn't said that. That doesn't age terribly well. And then I'll have takes like, man, I was right on the money on that one. I'd be lying to you if it was half and half. It's like 90-10 in the good take category. But we're all wrong at some point. But in all seriousness, though, for real though, it's a long season. It's 17 games, but every once in a while, something will come back around. What's the song by Timberlake? What goes around comes back around. I don't want to get sued for that. But I said in week 3, after week 3, really, after the Jets lost to the New England Patriots, one of the Patriots' only 2 wins of the season came in the Meadowlands against the Jets. They won 15-10. And yes, the game was as ugly as the score would indicate. 2 really, really, really bad quarterbacks, Mac Jones and Zach Wilson. But I said, it's okay, Robert Saleh. It's okay, Joe Douglas. It's okay, Jets organization. You missed on Zach Wilson. This is on you, the franchise, to not have a backup plan unless, God forbid, the worst case scenario, which 4 plays into the season, worst case scenario, unfortunately came to pass with Aaron Rodgers going down. You didn't have an adequate backup plan. It's funny, I mentioned that just 3 weeks ago. Again, see if this is from week 3. So this is 6 weeks ago. See if this sounds somewhat relevant on one of my carving up the context segments in the past. Again, if your goals and your your expectation, of course, your goal, you hope to win the Super Bowl, doesn't mean it's always realistic. What's your expectations? Again, when crazy stuff, when crisis, so to speak, football crisis in this sense hits, got to change your plan, got to do a 180, got to audible. Crisis is hit. Your backup quarterback, who's now unfortunately your starter, who I've said is an XFL quarterback. He's not good at playing the quarterback position. That is undeniable. We've seen that through his first 3 years in the NFL to this point. He's bad. You're going to waste your defense a second straight year. I heard it floated that, hey, why don't the Jets just tank this year? And because they got the first-round pick back from the Jets. Oh, yeah, and piss off the whole locker room and cost Robert Saleh his job? Let's not go with that option. Mess up the culture to a certain extent? That's a terrible idea. Admit you're wrong. Takes age pretty well. And Robert Saleh was talking today, and for the record, I love Robert Saleh. I think he was a tremendous defensive coordinator in San Francisco, and I think given the circumstances, he's done a pretty darn good. I mean, the fact that the Jets have the quarterback play that they do, and they're in the playoff hunt, is a credit to coaching. Now, Robert Saleh, this is kind of my rule for coaches. That and I took this for the record. This is not my original idea. I'm going to confess that up front. I've heard Colin Cowherd say this, and I totally agree with it. That when a coach specializes in a certain thing, so for example, Andy Reid specializes in offense. Safe to say the Chiefs, since Andy Reid have been there, have been a pretty good offense. Mike Tomlin specializes in defense. The Steelers are always great defensively. 2017 was a little bit of an oddball year. They weren't good on defense that year, but by and large, they're great defensively with Mike Tomlin. Robert Saleh is a defensive coach. Jets defense is fantastic. I mean, they did all they could. Yes, they gave up 27, but 7 of that was on a punt return for a touchdown. They held Justin Herbert to under 150 yards. The Chargers only ran for 84 yards, but Jets defense did all they could. It's just they have an abysmal offense that can't do anything whatsoever. And Robert Saleh was talking about Zach Wilson, but he was asked by Michael Kay. Michael Kay, obviously the voice of the New York Yankees, and he asked Coach Saleh, he said, quote, "You've got Trevor Siemian, backup quarterback, in the building. Why not give him a try?" Saleh answered, quote, "I got you. Again, fair question. Like I said, I don't know. I'm going to plead the fifth on this one in terms of I've kind of explained it respectfully, obviously. They're valid questions. I know from a passionate fan, from fans who are passionate, all having the same questions. I respect it greatly." End quote. Love Robert Saleh. That is the definition of a word salad. That is textbook word salad. The Jets are not only reaping the losses for not admitting they were wrong on Zach Wilson in terms of not moving off of him, whether they got Aaron Rodgers or not, get a better backup plan. Now, is it all on Zach Wilson? Of course not. That offensive line for the Jets is, listen, Aaron Rodgers' recovery from his Achilles surgery is it doesn't make sense. I don't know. I can definitively. We thought initially. I certainly thought I was in the masses. Oh yeah, Aaron isn't coming back this year because it's an Achilles injury. It's like the worst injury an athlete can suffer, especially an athlete of Aaron Rodgers' age. So of course he's not coming back. Except he's walking. He's dropping back. Throwing in during warmup. So he's looking better and better, certainly than he did just 2 months ago. Less than 2 months ago when he initially suffered the Achilles injury. I'm telling y'all, if I'm Aaron Rodgers, I'm doing what I used to do in Green Bay, except in a different way. I'm putting pressure. I'm not coming back this season. I'm putting pressure on that Jets organization. Hey guys, get me an offensive line. I'm going to be 40 years old, coming off an Achilles. Get me an O-line. Get me protection. So there's one. Listen, Green Bay did an awful job of putting receivers around Aaron outside of Devontae Adams. They always had a good offensive line. Always. They had Bakhtiari. They had Corey Linsley at one point. They had Jenkins. I mean, they had some really good players on that offensive line in Green Bay. Jets O-line is one of the worst in football statistically, and eye test and watch the film. They're bad. But for Zach Wilson, and I don't even want to pick on the kid, because one of my criticisms of Zach coming in the NFL, and certainly last year, was his maturity, lack of self-awareness. We all remember that infamous press conference moment against the Patriots last year where he didn't take accountability for playing poorly. That's gone. That appears, and guess what, y'all? We all mature. We all grow. We all get better. Zach obviously has. Thus far, we don't have any indication that there's turmoil in the locker room. We did last year. Remember when Zach got benched, Mike White came in, and the Jets players were wearing T-shirts with the backup quarterback on it? Not a great looks for Zach Wilson. I don't see, now, Trevor Siemian hasn't played yet, but if Trevor Siemian were to play, I don't anticipate there'll be Trevor Siemian T-shirts worn by players during warmups. So it's not as bad as it was last year from a locker room perspective. From a production perspective, folks, it's the same. He's thrown 5 touchdowns, 5 picks in 8 games. He's not the guy. And there's an organization in the NFL. There's an organization in the NFL that's in the NFC that is making, as if the Jets didn't look bad enough, they're making the Jets look even worse today. It's the Minnesota Vikings. They lost their quarterback for the season. Ironically, a sad irony, on an Achilles injury. Vikings were surging. They were gaining some momentum. They were about to get their 3rd straight win, get to 4-4, get back to the playoff hunt against a division rival at Lambeau. And Kirk Cousins suffers an Achilles injury and is done for the year. It's like a gut punch to that locker room, that organization, in a similar sense that it was for the Jets with Rodgers going down. You know what the Vikings did? First of all, they drafted a quarterback. The Jets did not. They drafted a quarterback named Jaren Hall last year. But they're like, Jaren Hall probably isn't the answer. We still think we're not a contender without Kirk Cousins, but you know what? We still think we can make the playoffs. As weak as the NFC is, as good as our roster is, as much as their defense has improved, Brian Flores there, as good as our receiving core is with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, we've got TJ Hawkinson. We can still make the playoffs. So guess what they did? They traded for a guy, been talked about a lot this week. He's been talked about a lot for a while on my show. Josh Dobbs. How's that worked out? We didn't anticipate Dobbs would come in and literally be Superman with basically no knowledge of the playbook, so to speak, on Sunday. But they pivoted quickly. They suffered. The worst thing that could have happened for the Vikings this season was their quarterback going down for the year. But they say, you know what? Pivot. Make up a quick move. Let's go get Dobbs. The Jets, because they're a poorly run franchise, they're like, no, we're going to stick with our guy, Zach Wilson. He's gotten better. Emotionally, yes. Ability-wise, no, he hasn't. He hasn't. Bill Parcells had the saying, and I quote him all the time, if the quarterback, if you don't know if the quarterback's the guy by year 3, move on. I could have told you Zach wasn't the guy after the middle of year 2. Heck, year 1 potentially, although maybe that would have been unfair that early, but you can usually tell pretty quickly. I talked about this with Wemby. You can usually tell if somebody's going to be special pretty quickly. And you can tell if somebody's going to be bad pretty quickly. The in-between, it's a little tough. It's a little murky. Zach's a bad quarterback. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.